William Dalrymple, The Anarchy, the East India Company, Corporate Violence, and the Pillage of an Empire. Embark on a fascinating journey into the early days of British rule in India through William Dalrymple's compelling chronicle, The Anarchy, the East India Company, Corporate Violence, and the Pillage of an Empire. This captivating book delves deep into the origins of the British East India Company, its powerful presence in India, and the violent conquest of the subcontinent that led to imperial rule. Discover how the company went from being a joint stock company, focused on trade, to a militarized entity bent on ravaging the wealthiest empire at the time. As you delve into this summary, you will explore the complex relationships, treacherous power struggles, and the devastating impact the British colonial rule had on India and its people.
The rise of the East India Company. In 1599, the East India Company was established as a joint stock company to enrich shareholders. They were granted a monopoly over trade in the East Indies. In 1608, the first Englishmen arrived in India to initiate trade with the Mughal Empire. The Mughals wowed the Europeans with their wealth, and the origin of the word Mughal dates back to these interactions. The company's mission was initially to build trading forts, which were soon established in Madras, Bombay, and Calcutta. These settlements attracted artisans and merchants seeking refuge from the unstable countryside. The company and its French rival took advantage of the Mughal Empire's weakness to build more forts and became militarized entities in the process. The 18th century saw India transformed violently into the richest colony in the world. Robert Clive and the East India Company's rise to power. The East India Company was the most advanced capitalist organization in the world by the 1750s and generated an eighth of Britain's import trade. Robert Clive, a company officer, oversaw the transformation of the company into a political power and usurped the increasingly anarchic Mughal Empire. Despite his violent and troubled past, Clive distinguished himself as an audacious military tactician in India. In 1756, Siraj-ud-Daulah, the governor of Bengal, attacked the company's Bengal fort, suspecting their intentions. At the same time, Shah Alam, heir to the Mughal throne, was consolidating his power and acquiring supporters. However, Robert Clive was already positioned to take control of Bengal. The rise of the East India Company. In the 18th century, Siraj led a massive army to sack Calcutta, setting the stage for a showdown with the East India Company. Robert Clive, a British soldier, declared war on Siraj and justified his coup to preserve the trade monopoly. Clive's forces emerged victorious at the Battle of Plassey, making him one of the richest men in Europe and giving the East India Company political power in India. They began a period of unbridled looting and asset stripping, effectively undermining the Mughal Empire that had ruled for 2 centuries. Clive's loot and the dangerous game of corporate domination. In the book, the author tells the story of how the British East India Company established its rule over Bengal through puppet rulers, human rights violations and chaos. The new Nawab, Mir Jafar, was not a match for the well-organized company and was replaced by Mir Qasim, who tried to level the playing field for local traders but found himself clashing with the company. The conflict erupted into war, revealing the dangerous game of corporate domination. The company's takeover. Mir Qasim, the military tactician, allied with the Mughal emperor and the Nawab of Awadh province in preparation for the company's impending battle. Despite almost winning the siege at Putna, Mir Qasim and his armies lost at the Battle of Buxar. The company became the dominant force in North India and took control of financial management of all northeast India. India was treated as a plantation, with profits shipped to London for the shareholders, while the people of Bengal were left to suffer. Bengal famine and the rise of India's wealth. In the 1770s, a 2-year drought caused a famine that killed 1.2 million Bengalis, which made the British East India Company unpopular in England. Parliament bailed out the company because it was generating half of Britain's trade. Robert Clive was interrogated but avoided official punishment. Warren Hastings and Philip Francis became next in charge, but their power struggle paralyzed the company's governance in India. The Marathas and the Sultan of Mysore forged an alliance, which led to the Triple Alliance's devastating blow to the company. Through military action and diplomacy, Hastings made a comeback leading to the Treaty of Salbai, which made sure that the enemies would not have such an opportunity to defeat the company again. The rise and fall of the last Mughal emperor. In The Last Mughal, Shah Alam, the symbolic leader of India, reclaims his ancestral peacock throne in Delhi with the help of the Marathas. But he is soon dissatisfied and goes to war to get his tribute lands back. He uses the spoils of war to revive Delhi's cultural scene and takes care of his growing court. However, the untimely death of his capable general Najaf Khan throws his court into turmoil, and he becomes reliant on the Marathas. Court gossip surrounding his adopted son, Ghulam Qadir, exacerbates family tensions. In 1788, Ghulam Qadir attacks Shah Alam's court, loots the palace, and even cuts out the old emperor's eyes, leaving him broken and in despair. The British rule in India. In the late 18th century, the British sent General Cornwallis to India to prevent a revolution similar to the American Revolution from happening there. Cornwallis implemented racist legislation to prevent a European Indian mixed class from threatening British rule. The company allied with influential Indian financiers who provided unlimited credit. The ruler of Mysore, Tipu Sultan, engaged in the Third and Fourth Anglo-Mysore Wars but was defeated due to the British's unlimited credit and support from Indian financiers. Cornwallis exacted half of Tipu's territory as the price of surrender, making the company the majority territorial power in India. With Richard Wellesley taking over, Tipu made overtures to Napoleon but was left without allies or money. Tipu died in the Fourth Anglo-Mysore War in 1799, leaving the company in control of India. The Maratha Challenge. The book documents the final Indian challenge to the British East India Company by the Marathas, a confederacy of princely states. After decades of political turmoil, 3 teenage princes emerged as prominent leaders, but their lack of unity allowed the company to successfully sign a binding alliance with Baji Rao and defeat his late allies individually. Despite backing the Marathas, the French were defeated, and Shah Alam, the blind and unhappy Mughal emperor, had to submit to British dominance at the Battle of Delhi. The book sheds light on the company's growing army and its ability to sustain itself financially with the Indian financiers' help. Finally, it describes the pitiful end of Shah Alam, who spent his life in survival diplomacy. The rise and fall of the East India Company. The East India Company's rule in India was brought to light during the impeachment trial of Warren Hastings in 1788. Eventually, Parliament abolished the company's monopoly of trade with India in 1813 and disbanded its private army and navy in 1859 after their violent actions in the Indian Rebellion of 1857. All company territories passed to the Crown, and the Queen became the ruler of India. This brought an end to the company's control over India, and its charter quietly expired in 1874.
In The Anarchy, William Dalrymple uncovers the dark history behind the rise of the British East India Company and the eventual fall of the Indian Mughal Empire. Through this book, we witness how the company went from being a simple trading entity to a brutal and powerful force that exploited Indian resources and wrought destruction on the subcontinent. The ultimate irony is that the British government eventually took over the company's territories, leading to Queen Victoria becoming the ruler of India. To understand how the British colonial era in India began, this insightful exploration into the company's origins is an invaluable resource, revealing a deep-rooted history of corporate violence, political deception, and ruthless ambition that defined the era of empire.